Good morning, my dear students. I hope I find you all in good health and good cheer. Welcome to another video on Arms in the Man. I hope you have watched all the other videos I made on this series. So if you haven't, I want you to stop here and go and watch all the others before going ahead with this one. So here I am today with another video on the second act of Arms in the Man. This is the part 2 of Arms in the Man. So in part 1, which we saw that how the act started about 4 months after the events of Act 1. So the whole act takes place in the Petkoff garden. We saw that. And we saw that it's after breakfast. During the first beat, we see Luca and Nicola having a conversation where Nicola is patronizing Luca while Luca is rejecting Nicola's advice. And we get certain information from them that Luca is privy to some family secrets, whereas Nicola, being a servant for 10 years in the household, he knows more secrets than Luca. Moreover, these two are engaged to be married, but we don't know the nature of their engagement. It's definitely not of a romantic nature. It is more of an engagement of convenience. That much we know. So while they are talking, Major Petkoff arrives after the war has ended. We see him, he's in his 50s, he doesn't have that much manners, he's quite rude and all. So this is actually quite a comedic sequence in which Petkoff arrives and Shaw is actually poking fun at the upper class society with his lack of manners and his exchange with Catherine. So they are having this conversation, Petkoff and Catherine, where Catherine objects to the peace treaty being signed between Bulgaria and Serbia. Through this objection, we know how much women knew about warfare at that time. They didn't know anything directly. All the knowledge they had about the battlefield, it came from stories told to them, recounted to them by men. So they have high expectations and ideals regarding war and a soldier. So we understand that. So while they are conversing, another character announces himself. It's Sergius. So in the last video, I just gave you a brief description about Sergius. He's tall, handsome, high-spirited, imaginative, etc. So I'll be reading the long stage directions given by rather than stage directions, we can say a long description given by Shaw about this character, Major Sergius Saranov. So without further ado, let's go ahead and read the next part of Act 2.
Major Sergius Saranov.
He goes into the house and returns presently with a third chair, which he places at the table. He then withdraws. Major Sergius Saranov, the original of the portrait in Rhina's room, is a tall, romantically handsome man with the physical hardihood, a high spirit, and the susceptible imagination of an untamed mountaineer chieftain. But his remarkable personal distinction is of a characteristically civilized type. The ridges of his eyebrows, curving with an interrogative twist around the projections at the outer corners, his jealously observant eye, his nose thin, keen, and apprehensive in spite of the pugnacious high bridge and large nostrils. His assertive chin would not be out of place in a Parisian saloon, showing that clever, imaginative barbarian has an acute critical faculty which has been thrown into intense activity by the arrival of Western civilization in the Balkans. The result is precisely what the advent of 19th century thought first produced in England, to wit, Byronism. By his brooding on the perpetual failure, not only of others but of himself, to live up to his ideas, by the consequent cynical scorn for humanity, by his jejune credulity as to the absolute validity of his concepts and the unworthiness of the world in disregarding them, by his wincings and mockeries under the sting of the petty disillusions which every hour spent among men brings to his sensitive observation. He has acquired the half tragic, half ironic air, the mysterious moodiness, the suggestion of a strange and terrible history that has left nothing but undying remorse by which Childe Harold fascinated the grandmothers of his English contemporaries. It is clear that here and nowhere is Raina's ideal hero. Catherine is hardly less enthusiastic about him than her daughter and much less reserved in showing her enthusiasm. As he enters from the stable gate, she rises effusively to greet him. Petkoff is distinctly less disposed to make a fuss about him.
Here already, Sergius. Glad to see you.
My dear Sergius.
My dear mother, if I may call you so.
Mother-in-law, Sergius, mother-in-law. Sit down and have some coffee.
Thank you, none for me.
So he gets away from the table with a certain distaste for Petkoff's enjoyment of it and posts himself with conscious dignity against the rail of the steps leading to the house. You look superb. The campaign has improved you, Sergius. Everybody here is mad about you. We were all wild with enthusiasm about the magnificent cavalry charge.
Madam, it was the cradle and grave of my military reputation.
How so?
I won the battle the wrong way when our worthy Russian generals were losing it the right way. That upset their plans and wounded their self-esteem. Two of their colonels got their regiments driven back on the correct principles of scientific warfare. Two major generals got killed strictly according to military etiquette. Those two colonels are now major generals, but I'm still but a simple major.
You should not remain so, Sergius. The women are on your side, and they will see that justice is done to you.
It is too late. I've only waited for the peace to send in my resignation.
Your resignation?
Oh, you must withdraw it.
I never withdraw.
Now you could have supposed you were going to do such a thing.
Everyone that knew me, but enough of myself and my affairs. How is Raina and where is she?
Rhina is here. So, in the previous video, I told you all about Major Sergius Saranov's appearance, and I read it in quite a detail in this particular video. So, I'll just quickly repeat what he is all about. He's tall and extremely romantic, handsome, high spirited, imaginative, and civilized. He is everything Petkoff is not. Petkoff doesn't have that much manners, whereas Sergius is actually very well mannered. He might have born into the upper class society when we look at his manners and all. And he has very nice physical features. So we can see an influence of Byronic romanticism in his manners. Like he is extremely romantic, idealistic, and patriotic. But at the same time, he is aware of his own failures and shortcomings. He has a certain scorn for humanities. He believes too much in his ideas. And for every person who doesn't believe in his ideas, he doesn't consider them as worthy. And he has good observation skills. He knows that the world around him is so full of disillusions. That might be why he has a half tragic, half ironic look. But all in all, we can say that he is the absolute picture of Raina's ideal hero. Now, Sergius has arrived the scene. Now we see Sergius, Petkoff, and Catherine having a conversation together. So when Sergius comes, he and his manners, that is something we have to consider. He's everything which Petkoff is not. We already mentioned that Petkoff is quite unruly and rude. He doesn't know the ways of behavior of the upper class society. But Sergius is the very embodiment of upper class manners. So, Petkoff was actually not very excited to see Sergius because there is obviously some kind of tension between Sergius and Petkoff because of his unprofessionalism exhibited in the Battle of Slivnitsa. So, when Sergius comes, he exhibits perfect gallantry in his behavior towards his mother-in-law, to be a mother-in-law, that is Catherine. He comes and kisses his mother-in-law's hands with gallantry. He even calls her mother, but Petkoff is not happy with somebody calling her, his wife mother. He says that it is mother-in-law. You shouldn't call her mother yet because you're not married to my daughter yet. That is this insinuation probably. So he says, mother-in-law, Sergius, mother-in-law. So we can say that Sergius is actually a caricature. He is an overblown picture of whatever this romantic ideals about a hero is. He is that. He has over the top manners, over the top features, everything. So he is actually a caricature at this point. He is all pomp and show. Everything is about him is a showing off of romantic ideals. Then, when Sergius comes, Catherine offers appreciations, congratulations that he has successfully led the cavalry charge into victory. But he replies very gravely that it was the cradle and grave of my military reputation. So it was the cradle and grave of my military reputation. That means the birth and death of my military reputation. Cradle meaning birth and grave meaning death. So we know what really happened because this was Sergius's first experience in the military. So he showed extreme courage, extreme bravery in the cavalry charge, but it was extremely unprofessional to throw a whole cavalry regiment at the mercy of an artillery. It was by sheer dumb luck that Sergius's regiment won the battle at Slivnitsa. So, according to military etiquette, this was a grave mistake. So they did not promote him. They did not give him any promotion. He was a major when the battle started. He is still a major now. So that is why he feels like he did not receive due merit for his contributions at the Battle of Slivnitsa. So he sent his resignation. He decided to resign from the army. Now, this is a shock to both Catherine and Petkov because, according to Catherine, he was supposed to marry Rhina and maybe get a bigger position in the army. And for Petkov also, nobody is as mad as throwing away a major title. So this is a shock to both Catherine and Petkov. The Sergius might have done this because he did not feel like he got enough credit for the victory because he was responsible for the victory according to him, even if it was unprofessional. So anyway, they are talking about this, and Sergius again says that I won the battle, but it was won in the wrong way because we had Russian backup, but we had two Russian colonels. Here it says that two Cossack colonels. Cossack just means Russian. Russian colonels, they lost their lives, but they lost their lives by keeping up the professionalism of the battlefield. Because every military has certain etiquettes, certain customs and practices which has to be followed very strictly. So they followed all the rules and they lost their lives. Now after the death they both have been promoted, but I did not follow the rules, but I got a victory, but still I did not get any promotion. So that is what is strict about military. Military is all about etiquettes and rules, principles. If you disobey an etiquette, you will have to suffer the consequences. Now, Catherine says that you don't have to worry. You will not always remain a major because all the women are behind you. We will make sure that you will get promoted. So you shouldn't be disheartened. Now, Sergius inquires about Raina. Okay, where is Raina? He's been here for what? 2 minutes. And where is this lover? Where is this betrothed? And all of a sudden, before this, Catherine and Petkov asks him to withdraw his uh, resignation. They don't want him to resign from the army. And Sergius knows that I was actually planning for this anyway. Now Sergius inquires about Rhina. And all of a sudden, she announces herself. She says, Rhina is here. And Sergius asks for Rhina like this. How is Rhina and where is Rhina? Now all of a sudden, she is turning around the corner of the house and saying, here is Rhina, or Rhina is here. Now this is quite dramatic and romantic. ആ പയ്യൻ ആ പെൺകുട്ടിയെ പറ്റി ചോദിച്ച ആ സെക്കൻഡ് തന്നെ പെൺകുട്ടി അവിടെ ചാടി വീഴും. So is it a coincidence, or do you think Raina was hiding all that while until he mentioned her name so that he can surprise him at the same moment? So the meeting between the couple, it is actually extremely dramatic and romantic. I'll read this bit for you. She makes a charming picture as they turn to look at her. She wears an underdress of pale green silk, draped with an overdress of thin ecru canvas embroidered with gold. She is crowned with a dainty eastern cap of golden tinsel. Sergius goes impulsively to meet her. Posing regally, she presents her hand. He drops chivalrously on one knee and kisses it. Now, it describes all about her clothing. First, her dressing. She is dressed in a very smart and lovely way. And when she sees her engaged or betrothed, her fiance, what she does is she makes a very royal pose, first of all, like a queen or a princess. She makes a pose like that and she gives her hand to be kissed. And he drops on one knee instantly. He bows down and takes Raina's hand and kisses it. So the whole meeting thing is it's extremely dramatic and romantic. It doesn't happen like this in real life. So it is again bordering on caricature. The show actually wants to expose the nature of the relationship between Sergius and Raina at this point of time, because they claim that they are lovers and they truly love each other, but every time they are together in each other's company, they act really fake though. So show might want to expose the nature of pretension in their relationship. That is why he is making them do over the top gestures and all. See, this is what happens. This is another stage. So Raina suddenly comes around. So she's striking a pose here, giving the hand, and Sergius is very chivalrous. So this is the tea table and all. You see the clothes hanging in the lining. This is not upper class manners anyway. And you can even see a picture of the Balkans here, Balkan mountain range. So let's see what happens after Raina has entered the scene. Rhina is here. She makes a charming picture as they turn to look at her. She wears an underdress of pale green silk draped with an overdress of thin ecru canvas embroidered with gold. She is crowned with a dainty eastern cap of gold tinsel. Sergius goes impulsively to meet her. Posing regally, she presents her hand. He drops chivalrously on one knee and kisses it.
Pretty, isn't it? She always appears at this right moment.
Yes, she listens for it. It is an abominable habit. Sergius leads Rhina forward with splendid gallantry. When they arrive at the table, she turns to him with a bend of the head. He bows, and thus they separate. He coming to his place, and she going behind her father's chair. Dear father, welcome home.
My little pet girl.
And you're no longer a soldier, Sergius.
I am no longer a soldier. Soldiering, my dear madam, is the coward's art, attacking mercilessly when you are strong, and keeping out of harm's way when you are weak. That is the whole secret of successful fighting. Get your enemy at a disadvantage and never, on any account, fight him on equal terms. Eh, Major?
They wouldn't let us make a fair stand of fight of it. However, I suppose soldiering has to be a trade like any other trade.
Precisely, but I have no ambition to succeed as a tradesman. So I have taken the advice of that bagman of a captain that settled the exchange of prisoners with us at Peru, and given it up.
What? That Swiss fellow? Sergius, I often thought of that exchange since. He overreached us aboard those horses.
Of course he overreached us. His father was a hotel and livery stable keeper, and he owed his first step to his knowledge of horse stealing. Ah, he was quite a soldier, every inch a soldier. If only I had bought the horses for my regiment instead of foolishly leading it into danger, I should have been a field marshal by now.
Swiss? What was he doing in the Serbian army?
A volunteer, of course, keeping on picking up his profession. We shouldn't have been able to be fighting if these foreigners hadn't shown us how to do it. We knew nothing about it, and neither did the Serbians. Again, there have been no war without them.
Are there many Swiss officers in the Serbian army?
No, all Austrians, just as the officers were all Russians. This was only Swiss I came across. I'll never trust a Swiss again. He cheated us and begged us into giving him 50 able-bodied men for 200 confounded worn-out chargers. They weren't even eatable.
We were two children in the hands of that consummate soldier, Major. Simply two innocent little children.
What was he like? Oh, Raina, what a silly question.
He was like a commercial traveler in uniform, bourgeois to the boots.
Sergius, tell Catherine that the cure story his friend told us about him, how he escaped Silvintesa,
Slivnitsa.
Slivnitsa. You remember about him being hit by two women?
Oh, yes, quite a romance. He was serving in the very battery I so unprofessionally charged. Being a thorough soldier, he ran away like the rest of them, with our cavalry at his heels. To escape their attentions, he had the good taste to take refuge in the chamber of some patriotic young Bulgarian lady. The young lady was enchanted by his persuasive commercial traveler's manners. She very modestly entertained him for an hour or so, and then called in her mother lest her conduct should appear unmaidenly. The old lady was equally fascinated, and the fugitive was sent on his way in the morning, disguised in an old coat belonging to the master of the house, who was away at the war.
Your life in the camp has made you coarse, Sergius. I did not think you would have repeated such a story before me. She is right, Sergius. If such women exist, we should be spared the knowledge of them.
Pooh, nonsense. What does it matter?
No, Pedgift, I was wrong. I beg your pardon. I have behaved abominably. Forgive me, Rhina, and you too, madam. The glimpses I have had of the seamy side of life during the last few months have indeed made me cynical. But I should not have brought my cynicism here, least of all into your presence, Raina. I...
Stuff and nonsense, Sergius. That's quite enough fuss about nothing. A soldier's daughter should be able to stand up without flinching to a little strong conversation. Come, it's time for us to get to business. We have to make up our minds how those three regiments are to get back to
Philippopolis.
Philippopolis. There's no force for them on Sofia route. Come along.
Oh, Paul, can't you spare Sergius for a few moments? Rhina has hardly seen him yet. Perhaps I can help you to settle about the regiments.
My dear madam, impossible.
You stay here, dear Sergius. There's no hurry. I have a word or two to say to Paul.
Oh, very well.
Now, dear, come and see the electric bell.
Oh, very well, very well.
They go into the house together affectionately. Sergius, left alone with Raina, looks anxiously at her, fearing that she is still offended. She smiles and stretches out her arms to him. Now, in this part, we see Raina's entry into the scene. So, there are four characters on stage now. So, Raina is greeted by Sergius first, a very dramatic and romantic reunion between the engaged couple. Then Raina comes down and inquires about her father because she hasn't seen her father for 4 months because he has been in the battlefield. So she is quite a dutiful daughter. She inquires about her father. So Petkov also answers in a very tender manner to Raina. So we can see that Petkov has a certain kind of love and tenderness towards Raina. But this can be contrasted with Catherine because Catherine knows Raina's true nature, that Raina is not this person who she pretends to be. She is quite a different person in reality. So Catherine, even Petkov says that how does she do it? How does she turn up at the right moment when someone mentions her name? അവളുടെ പേര് വിളിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് തന്നെ അവൾ എങ്ങനെ വരുന്നു? So he is quite adorably he's pointing this out, whereas Catherine knows the reality. She says that yes, she listens for it. It is an abominable habit because she has the abominable habit of listening to a conversation until someone mentions her name, so that she can make her presence, make an appearance. ഒരു ഡ്രാമ ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു പെൺകുട്ടിയാണ് റൈന, ഈവൻ ഇൻ റിയൽ ലൈഫ്. So then the discussion turns about soldiering. So Sergius says that soldiering is a coward's act of attacking when you're strong and keeping out of harm's way when you're weak. And even Petkov says that I suppose soldiering has to be a trade like any other trade. About soldiering, these women had lofty and romantic ideas about being a soldier and being in the battlefield. Now, that is finally shattered by this discussion where the war heroes, Sergius and Petkov, they themselves say that soldiering, there is nothing that much romantic about soldiering. It is actually all about calculation of risks and striking the enemy when you are strong and keeping safe when you are weak. It is all about calculation of power and risk and acting upon it. സോ വാർ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സാധനത്തിന് അതുവരെ ഒരു ഹീറോയിക് ആൻഡ് റൊമാൻറ്റിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഐഡിയൽ ആയിരുന്നു കൊടുത്തിരുന്നത്. നൗ ദാറ്റ് ഐഡിയ ഓഫ് ഹീറോയിസം attributed to war is finally shedded. Okay, we can see that in this conversation. Now, Petkov mentions that soldiering is also like a trade. It is not anything romantic or lofty, it is a trade. Now, the conversation changes to discussing about trade. Now, Petkov and Sergius mentions that they met a Swiss officer in the Serbian army. He is quite a tradesman. So they had some horse trading business. After the war, when the peace treaty was signed, they met with a Swiss officer. He was working as a mercenary in the Serbian army. His father kept many hotels. And the men met this person during a horse deal after the war. So this man whom they met, he showed extreme businessman skills because he manipulated them, the Bulgarian army, to give up 50 prisoners in exchange of 200 useless horses. So does this Swiss officer seem familiar to you? Yes, indeed. Here the dramatic tension rises. This person is obviously the same man who was hidden in Raina's bedroom. So you can imagine how Catherine and Raina might be feeling. They are in the stage with the men and they listen to the news about this Swiss man, especially a man whose father has hotels. In Act 1, the stranger mentions that his father ran 6 hotels. So Catherine and Rhina, obviously they are squirming at this point of time. And then Major Petkov and Sergius shares another weird story this Swiss mercenary told them. He did not tell them directly. They heard it from his friend. So this story was about him being saved by a Bulgarian lady, a young unmarried lady and her mother from the fusillade after the Battle of Slivnitsa. So obviously they were impressed by his features and his commercial traveler's manners. He has this, he is good mannered. So they were impressed and they decided to save him from their own army. And then they entertained him for a while in the lady's bedroom. And after a while, when everything was safe, they sent him out dressed in an old coat belonging to the master of the household. Now, this is a very important piece of information. How did this man escape from this household? How is this man saved? So he was disguised. First of all, he was disguised. When he exited this house, he was wearing an old coat belonging to Major Petkov. Okay, so this is a very key piece of information. Again, this is an instance of dramatic irony because we as audience, we know that the ladies who they are talking about is actually the very ladies present in the scene, Catherine and Rhina. Catherine and Rhina knows that the story is about them. But poor Sergius and Petkov, they don't know that they are talking about their own women. So they are actually laughing at the women, but they don't know that they are laughing at themselves. So this is another instance of show's wit and penchant for comedy. Now Raina and Petkov, they pretend that they are offended by the story because they pretend that we are not ladies like that. We are very good ladies, well mannered ladies. We don't want to hear about such stories of such women. So you shouldn't have mentioned such a coarse and scandalous story in front of them. So just imagine if anybody knows that, comes to know that it is actually Raina who is the lady of the story. The scandal it will bring to her will be unprecedented. It hasn't happened to her before. But they fake like they are offended at the mention of this story. This is again show is poking fun at the hypocrisy of the upper class because they did all this act, but now they're pretending like they don't even want to hear about the ladies who would act like this. Now this is actually show's way of poking fun at the hypocrisy of upper class. Petkov is unaffected for him because he is very rude and he doesn't know much of manners. അയാള് വലിയ കോഴ്സ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു മനുഷ്യനാണ്, വളരെ റഗഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു റഫ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള മനുഷ്യനാണ്. He says that what nonsense, ladies getting offended by stories and all. I don't believe that. But Sergius, who has genuine manners, he feels sorry and he apologizes to both the ladies for being brash like this. So we can again see the contrast between Petkov's unrefined ways and Sergius's gallantry. Sergius വളരെ ജെനുവിൻ ആയിട്ട് മാനേഴ്സ് ഉള്ള ആളാണ്. പെറ്റ്കോഫ് അതേസമയം വളരെ റൂഡാണ്, മാനേഴ്സ് ഇല്ലാത്ത ഒരാളാണ്. Then Petkov now wants to go inside and he wants Sergius's help because he wants to find a perfect route to send 3 regiments of army to Philippopolis. But Catherine actually wants Rhina and Sergius to spend some good private time together. So she says that I can help you with anything. So I want to show you the electric bell because when you were away, I installed an electric bell. So I want to show you the electric bell. Now, Catherine and Petkov go inside the house. So on the stage, it is just Sergius and Raina now. Let's see how the lovers act when they are alone.
Am I forgiven?
My hero, my king.
My queen.
How I have envied you, Sergius. You have been out in the world, on the field of battle, able to prove yourself there worthy of any woman in the world, whilst I've had to sit at home inactive, dreaming, useless, doing nothing that could give me the right to call myself worthy of any man.
Dearest, all my deeds have been yours. You inspired me. I have gone through the war like a knight in a tournament with his lady looking on at him.
And you have never been absent from my thoughts for a moment. Sergius, I think we two have found the higher love. When I think of you, I feel that I could never do a base deed or think of an ignoble thought.
My lady, my saint.
My lord and my...
Let me be the worshipper, dear. You little know how unworthy even the best man is of a girl's pure passion.
I trust you. I love you. You will never disappoint me, Sergius.
Luca is heard singing within the house. They quickly release each other. I can't pretend to talk indifferently before her. My heart is too full. Now Luca comes from the house with her tray. She goes to the table and begins to clear it with her back turned to them. I will get my hat and then we can go out until lunchtime. Wouldn't you like that?
Be quick. If you're away 5 minutes, it will seem 5 hours.
Now Raina runs to the top of the steps and turns there to exchange looks with him and wave him a kiss with both hands. He looks after her with emotion for a moment, then turns slowly away, his face radiant with loftiest exaltation. The movement shifts his field of vision into the corner of which there now comes the tail of Luca's double apron. His attention is arrested at once. He takes a stealthy look at her and begins to twirl his mustache mischievously with his left hand akimbo on his hip. Finally, striking the ground with his heels in something of a cavalry swagger, he strolls on to the other side of the table opposing her and says,
Luca, do you know what the higher love is?
So in this particular sequence, we see that Raina and Sergius are left alone out in the garden. It is a fine spring morning, an extremely romantic setting for an engaged couple to find themselves in. So this is a picture of a dramatization of the very scene. We can see that they both are feeling very romantic, and this particular scene is actually quite weird and over the top. They both act a little extra, so to say. മൊത്തത്തിൽ കുറച്ച് ഓവറാണ് രണ്ടുപേരുടെയും ഒരു ബിഹേവിയർ. Let's see how they act. Now, when her father and mother left the scene, Sergius once again asks for forgiveness to Rhina because he was very brash before. He shared that story about 2 Bulgarian women saving the Swiss man. But then they exchange words of praise and worship to each other. They call each other my hero, my queen, my king, and all. They say that they worship each other. And both of them, we can see that both of them are in a world of romance actually. They both live in a romantic world and they idealize this world where men actually get to perform great actions, while women they wait inactive and dreaming for the return of these men. So Raina says that I have been inactive and dreaming. I just envy you. You were away in the battlefield. You were doing great deeds. And then Sergius says that whatever actions I did in the battlefield, I did it in your honor. നിനക്ക് വേണ്ടിയാണ് ഞാൻ ഇതെല്ലാം ചെയ്തത്. You were my inspiration behind all this heroic act. So the whole conversation is over the top romantic and it is quite sickening. After a while you feel like vomiting. That is a kind of conversation that is going on. So it is far from reality and it is not at all practical. And the audience actually questions the nature of their love. So is it actually true love that Raina and Sergius shares? So in their conversation, we can also see that they follow the stereotypical romantic gender roles in the conversation. For example, men do all the great actions, women are inactive and they keep waiting. Like നമ്മുടെ ഈ ഫെയറി ടേൽസ് പോലെ വിമൻ സ്ലീപ്പിംഗ് ബ്യൂട്ടി ഒക്കെ ഉറങ്ങിക്കൊണ്ടേയിരിക്കും. Whereas a prince has to find their way to the sleeping beauty and make her awake. For example, the man being brave like a knight, it's actually KNIGHT, and him worshipping his lady, etc. Then they say that they love each other, they trust each other, and while they are hugging each other and they are exchanging all these weird words, Luca is heard from inside. So she is actually coming to the stage. Raina says that she can't continue being unaffected in Luca's presence. What it really means is that Raina is actually faking being in love and all, being romantic and all. So in Luca's presence, she won't be able to keep up the act because Luca might laugh at her, right? So she says that we will go out for a walk, and she goes inside to fetch her hat for a walk. And as she goes in, Sergius is actually looking at her. സെർജിയസ് ഇവൾ പോകുന്നത് ഇങ്ങനെ നോക്കി ഇങ്ങനെ നിൽക്കുകയാണ്. കുറച്ച് മുന്നോട്ട് നടന്നതിന് ശേഷം റൈന വളരെ റൊമാൻറ്റിക് ആയിട്ട് തിരിഞ്ഞു നോക്കുന്നു. She turns and exchange looks from him and she gives him a flying kiss again. She waves him a kiss with both the hands. So it's again quite dramatic how these lovers part just for 5 minutes because she has to go upstairs to get her hat. Now Raina has exited and Luca has come onto the stage. Now we find Luca and Sergius alone on stage. Now let's see what happens between Luca and Sergius in the next video. So I'm stopping this video here. So I hope this has been a beneficial video for you guys. Thank you so much for your attention. Have fun. Bye.